So now we'll reconvene into open session. First, I will report on closed session, the reportable action taken. In regards to item 4B1, the board met in closed session to discuss a student expulsion case. Is there a motion?
I move that student number 1819-03 be expelled from Tamalpais Union High School District for the following. Section 48900T.4, intentionally engage in harassment, threats, or intimidation directed against school personnel or pupils. Section 48900K, disrupted school activities or otherwise willfully defied valid authority of school personnel, and pursuant to the terms and conditions of the rehabilitation program established by the board during closed session, the order of the expulsion is suspended through June 25, 2020, effective immediately. Students shall be allowed to enroll in Sir Francis Drake High School under a stipulated agreement commencing June 26, 2019. If the student should violate any of the terms or the conditions of the rehabilitation plan, the order of the suspended expulsion will be revoked and he will be expelled without a further hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mary, this is a roll call vote.
Ms. Rowan?
Aye.
Mr. Oppenheim?
Aye.
Mr. Spectra?
Aye.
Ms. Highlander?
Aye, thank you. Now I ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The agenda is approved. Now is when I ask for a volunteer to read the board norms, and I think we've gone full circle. Oh, great. Thank you. I was going to do it thinking no one would offer, but thank you, Dan.
The board will come prepared and be fully present and engaged, deliberate effectively and listen openly without interrupting, work collaboratively and strive for consensus, maintain perspective with a sense of humor, not repeat each other or ourselves, not have side conversations, give full attention to proceedings, no cell phone use, focus on the best interests of all students, commit to no surprises.
Thank you. We're off to a really good start. Okay, now we're going to move on to the consent agenda, and first I'll ask if there's any public comment on the consent agenda.
Seems to be some happening.
Pardon me?
Seems to be some happening.
There's something happening over there?
No public comments happening.
Yeah, it's happening just now.
Oh, I can't see it? Okay. No, I get it now. Thought you were correct. Anyway, I was looking at the podium. What am I missing here? This is a problem. Okay. So we have no public comment. So now I'd like to ask if any trustees would like to remove any items off of the consent agenda for discussion.
The superintendent would like to remove the personnel summary.
Okay, thank you. So with the personnel summary removed, can I please ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And this has a roll call vote because of one of the consent agenda items.
Ms. Rowan?
Aye.
Mr. Oppenheim?
Aye.
Mr. Spectra?
Aye.
Ms. Highlander?
Aye, thank you. Now we're moving on to the superintendent's report.
Oh.
That is you.
That is me. The last two meetings, it was at the end.
Yeah.
So I was thinking it was going to be at the end again. I don't have anything particularly new to add. I just think my last newsletter, which went out after the last board meeting, in which I included my feelings on some recent activities, a short piece I called Respect and Responsibility. And I think that is something, I know it is something we will be moving forward with in our schools next year. Looking at broader respect and responsibility in a lot of ways. I had the opportunity to attend the Tam High town hall or community forum that JC Principal Farr put on, and I thought it was, and I know that there were several board members there as well, I thought it was well attended. I thought it was a good conversation. I was facilitating one of the smaller groups for the second part of the evening, and in my small group, we got to discussing the conversation had started to really focus on punishments. How are we going to punish kids into doing the right thing? And I asked if we could pause and reflect on this idea of doing the right thing for the right thing's sake. That at some point, just punishing kids into compliance isn't teaching the values we want them to have. And it kind of came back to the book, The Parents We Mean to Be, but also a lot of what I've been reading this year around, so you want to talk about race and the white fragility, just a lot of things around how do we demonstrate respect for all people, and whose responsibility is it? And in what is that responsibility grounded? I don't believe it should just all be punishment. I think we have to start teaching some intrinsic value of treating people well because they're people and they deserve that based on just being people. They deserve our respect, and that it is our individual responsibility to build that, and to behave that way. And I think teaching more responsibility for responsibility's sake, and having more of those conversations with our students, giving more opportunities to really discuss values and what they're grounded in and why we behave the way we behave. And that it's not just about that I won't get to do this or this will happen, but that because this is the person I wish to be in the world, and this is the people I wish to be around in the world. So that's sort of where the piece in my newsletter came from. And hoping to engage parents and staff and students in broader conversations next year.
Thank you.
I was very impressed with your letter and the piece that you put in there about respect and responsibility, and I thought the works you recommended were, I have read 2 of them now, and then the link to the danger of a single story, which actually I had just done in a PD workshop also. And it seems common sense when you hear Adichie speak about the single story, but many of us have been teaching single stories or been exposed to single stories. And you said you did the work at TAM, and I think the work is needed at all of our sites, right? It's needed at my site over in the East Bay, and it's needed at the feeder districts. And so anything that we can do to drive that intrinsic motivation, which psychology and behavioral studies have said that's what works, right? Extrinsic, whether it's in rewards or punishments, may be necessary at some point, but what really drives students and people is the intrinsic motivation. And so I look forward to seeing where this goes, and hopefully parents and students and teachers also become involved in the dialogue and read some of this material so that it becomes a district-wide mantra as opposed to one site or one set of teachers. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you again. So we have a handful of trustee considerations, and the first is to take action on the local control and accountability plan for 2019-2020.
So this was there have been no changes made to the LCAP since it was presented, and there was no additional feedback that sort of warranted addition to the LCAP itself. So unless there's further questions on the LCAP.
Any questions, clarifications before we take action? So we need to approve the plan and then the addendum. Okay.
Yeah, they have
So-
to be approved separately.
Okay, so could I please ask for a motion to approve the local control and accountability plan for 2019-2020?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you, that passed. Now we'll move on to the next one. Take action on the LCAP ESSA addendum.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, that passed. Now we're going on to another item that's a carry-on. Take action on the 2019-2020 proposed budget and related reserve levels.
So good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to bring back the same budget proposal that was brought forward to the board and the community at last board meeting. There are no changes in the proposal in front of you. Making sure this is going to fall. Good. I did want to bring just a couple reminders for consistent communication, a couple key highlights from the budget that's proposed this evening. Couple quick reminders. This is a summary of our multi-year projection. The 4 years, the current year we're living in, next year's budget proposal 2019-20, and the 2 subsequent years that's required as part of a 3-year multi-year projection. We're looking at the 2 rows in the bottom, June 2019, the blue rows, that's our current projections. So again, we are proposing effectively a balanced budget next school year, a slight surplus of $201,000. Again, relative to a $92 million budget, that's effectively balanced. But we are still seeing a slight operating deficit in the subsequent years of $1.3 million and $529,000. We should feel a lot of great work has been done this current year with our community, with our stakeholders, with our staff, with our parents, our community support to get to this place of a balanced budget. That being said, our goal is to still have a balanced budget, and we're moving towards fiscal sustainability, and so there's still work to be done. Not only that, we obviously have a stated board policy of a targeted reserve fund balance of 17%. We're not there yet, so that's another goal that we want to continue to make strides towards in our long-term planning. I do want to just show what the multi-year projection looks like. This is a required legal document that we submit to the county office along with the adopted budget from the board. The bright green line shows what our unrestricted operating deficits are that I just showed in the previous slide. I do want to show add that we are doing a much more granular analysis on a 5-year horizon because we don't feel like a 3-year multi-year projection, while it meets the legal requirement, we want to have a longer horizon planning for fiscal sustainability. And then briefly, next steps before I open up to any questions of our calendar. Again, we have a legal requirement to enact a budget by the end of June, adopt a budget, I should say. There's also a legal requirement that the state of California enacts a budget by the end of this month. Should there be some changes in the final language that's approved by the state legislature, I'll bring back those updates. As of now, I'm not seeing anything of material change. There's talk of some slight changes in the PERS and STRS rates across the board. Nothing's settled yet, but I'll bring that back at the appropriate time. And then in September, of course, we're bringing back our unaudited actuals for this current school year. We'll be busy closing the books in July and August, seeing where things settled. How does that impact our starting fund balance for this current school year? And again, I'll be back again in December, and the whole cycle starts again. So with that, again, I'm not going to highlight the reserve disclosure that's accompanied in the packet, but I'd love to open up to any questions or comments.
Thank you, Corbett.
Sure.
Any comments, questions?
Because student projections are part of the budget, right? Do we have any news on the extra 100 students? Any updates on that?
Yes, we have a little bit of update. We're doing some pretty deeper dive into where the current enrollment are. Dr. Topi and I looked at that at Drake, Tam, and Redwood this morning. Saw some slight changes there. Another place we're looking, we just want to make sure that the students who live in our community are indeed those that are attending our schools. So we're getting into some, there are some students that we've had some residency issues with that we're followed up upon, and we are following up to make sure they show appropriate proof of residency. So there is going to be some decrease coming out of that. That's something we're actively pursuing this summer.
I think I'm going to make a point to call Michael Futterman and let him know. I know that was one thing he was always very concerned about, and he'll be pleased to see that the district's making progress.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for that.
I think also, to Cynthia's point,
Yeah.
and when we get I was going to say the warm body count.
Yeah, don't-
We were talking about all the
Yeah.
negative, all the terminology we use in education, cohort survival, warm body count.
Yeah, we were-
When we count all the warm ones in August, we're going to take a deeper dive because we can run reports and find out sort of where, one, who actually showed up out of them, and then look at where there, like I said, we know there were certain schools that this year seemed to be an anomaly of how many kids were coming in from there. See if those actually pan out for a few reasons. One, is this a school that we need to communicate more clearly with? If they don't come, you know what I mean? Because we can also see who dropped. Just figuring out is there a communication piece we can fix so that we're not struggling with this, or was this is there something going on in the community? Try to sort of dig a little deeper in August.
Dan, I think you had something.
Right, so I was just going to say, it's great looking at this budget for next year in terms of having the modest surplus there, and I think as we look at this as we look at the multi-year projections, still see the red out there, and so this, I think, we'll look at as the approval for 19 and 20, and then over this next year, we don't have to focus on the cuts, but then can think about the multi-year and how to figure out the right plan for sustainable budgets for those years.
Kevin, did you have anything? I have to say something before we vote. Do you ever watch Jeopardy? It's like whoever hits the microphone the fastest, and you win. You're really very good. Because Barbara's not here, so I have more of a view. You're very fast. You're very good.
Is it Jeopardy or Whack-A-Mole?
No, because I saw Dan going like this, and you got there, and I thought, wow, it's like watching Jeopardy. Will you two watch? Okay, so I think we can.
Very surprising. I'm very surprised.
If I could add something briefly on the residence checks, I want to reassure the board that we're taking very seriously that making sure that our district resources are being appropriately used by those students who should have access to it. Also, we want to make sure that it's done in a tactful, appropriate, respectful manner. So I want to reassure the board that West Cedars and I met with the firm we're using, that we're contracting with to do that, experienced firm that works with San Rafael City Schools, Novato City Schools, Mill Valley, met with him in person to make sure we're comfortable with his tack because he is representing the district. So we both felt very confident with that. So I just wanted to reassure the board of that.
I have to say something. Looking at this, having now looked at this same spreadsheet for about 2 years now, seeing a number in the black in 1920, I mean, just looking at a trajectory where the red numbers are smaller than they have been is there were some. It was hard to imagine the trajectory we're on, and it's comforting to see where we are now. So I know there was a lot of work on your part and all of our part, but that is, it's nice to see a number in the black in the deficit spending having a surplus in 1920 and then numbers that are manageable going forward. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you very much, because it's been quite a year, and it's taken a lot of not only understanding the numbers, but the creativity that your team has shown with whether it's a staffing plan or restructuring personnel, who's teaching what. I mean, you've just been very creative with how you have reduced the budget, and you reduced the budget quite significantly in real time. It's you didn't wait until this year. You did it real time, which is pretty impressive. So yeah, thank you. And
thank you.
Yeah,
I agree in it. Well, technically, we can make the math work. What I'm most proud of is how our community, while we have different opinions, the response from our community and our staff to engage in the conversation, to engage in problem solving. I think this represents a shared solution that no one group, one entity, everyone contributed toward that, and I think we honored the feedback of the community. So I want to applaud people in the room, Dr. Tope, and the board for supporting, providing guidance on that. So this is a much better place to be than the top two rows. So that's a great way to
much better. Yeah. So thank you, everyone. Any other comment before we take a vote? She's going to bring a fake hand and just, okay. Can I ask for a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Oh, that was, okay. No.
Second.
Although she's going to come with an extension to the microphone. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, that passed, and congratulations, thank you.
Thank you.
Good 6 months on the job, pretty good.
I think I'm up to 9.
Are you? Okay, I haven't counted that closely, I
Neither
guess.
have
Yeah, I bet.
He
Okay.
has 1 month more than I do.
Oh,
That's right. Get seniority honor.
okay, so the next one is the second reading of the administrative regulation, the field trips.
Yes. So just as a brief reminder, at the last board meeting, we brought forward a first reading of a proposed change to AR 6153 district-sponsored field trips with a specific added language for global studies field trips only, changing the supervision staff ratios from the current 1 to 10 to 1 to 12 adults per students for, again, global studies field trips only. We discussed that, and just the board gave direction for us to do some work on identifying with what are other districts looking at. So Dr. Topi and I looked at that. She's got a few data points, comparable data points to share. And then also there was a direction to identify what are the protocols for the global studies field trips. So I reached out to Brian Zalian, the global studies coordinator, who provided that. So I'm going to hand over to Dr. Topi to share a little bit.
Yeah, so we, Corbett and I did some research and particularly looked at places like Acalanes, Palo Alto, Mountain View, those places. And I will admit I was surprised to find that none of them have a ratio. They don't they don't spell a ratio out in their board policy. Instead, they use language like as necessary to ensure safety. And so with that, I think it was, we looked at some other things where some water things, it was 8 to 1, if there was water related, or other things that were higher. But it was sort of a as needed basis, which is, I think, what we were trying to get at. We feel there are some trips that, even just adding the 2, it would just make the trip more manageable for the adults and not having to find a third adult. We don't think it would compromise the safety of the students at all in that scenario. And so that was sort of the impetus behind it, that we would certainly ensure that the kids were as safe in that process. So that was an interesting, it was an interesting find that most districts don't actually put a ratio out there.
And then I think, Cynthia, you were asking, because so much of the discussion was on everything but safety, and so you were asking for protocols in terms of what are we doing to ensure the safety. Is that, my memory serve me right? Okay.
Yeah, what guidelines are we providing?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mary, if you would you mind pulling up the protocol attachment, please? So again, while this is pulling up, I'm not going to read this to you. This is in the packet, but this came from Brian Zalian directly, who's been, Tara, help me out. How long has he been the coordinator for the Global Studies program?
12 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the release period has been in place since 2012. So 7 years with the release, and it was a couple of years before that, so.
And obviously that's for district-wide programs, not just at Tam High. So, again, Brian outlines the different types of programs, some of the nuance of the different type of protocols he's put into place.
But I think there was something on there that specifically addresses the supervision during the hotels.
During
and
the hotel was our question, yeah.
Explicitly, that the teachers and chaperones are to supervise the meals at the hotel curfew, to ensure that students are in their room and stay in their room. So that is part of the chaperone.
Mary, if you go to 1B, please, I think that just shows a little bit.
Yeah, go back the other way.
Up, please.
Up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, there it is. Whoop.
I was struck by there's a section, I think a little further down, where they were asking that, part of enforcing the hotel curfew, that the front desk staff is asked to call the teacher if a student makes know that they want to leave the hotel. Is that really the level of supervision that happens? Because I don't think a student's going to go to the front desk. I mean, some of these hotels are very, I don't know
Right.
what size
Yeah.
you're in.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe only France is the one where they actually stay a night in the hotel. But
Yep.
is that really the level? Do we put it on the front desk to call teachers?
That's for after hours, I assume, right? I'm only saying this because my son went on, and my daughter, and
Yeah.
it was more for like if at 1 a.m, I thought that they watched, I don't know.
That's my assumption as well.
Yeah,
I can't
that it was
speak.
more of, they were told, hey, if you see one of our students leave, don't just wave goodbye,
When I read that, that was my assumption.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that is just a reminder that just to tell this hotel staff, like, hey, I'm in room 10.
Yeah.
If any of these munchkins try to walk out that door between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m., call me.
Right.
More of an extra layer,
Yeah.
not the sole layer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, my concern has normally been along the lines to our parents really understand the level of supervision that their students are receiving. And it's really that part of the communication, that there's no surprises, or the parents are comfortable.
Sure.
And I mean, it seems like he covers that, but every country's different too. Spain
Absolutely.
curfew is very different hour than France. I mean, it's that kind of thing that parents have to really be engaged and understand where they're sending their children.
Absolutely.
I think you know that he holds parent meetings. And,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they're-
he does. And
He's
you,
pretty thorough with
he's
his-
he's very thorough. And then this was actually, I want to share this with the board, because this was, I found really helpful with my youngest who went through it, with Skype. He really pushed for, not only were the students communicating for 6 months before they even know who they were going to be staying with and exchanging with, but then when it came time that they were paired up, we had Skype sessions with the parents as a family and spoke back and forth about everything from food, allergies. So you actually became more comfortable with the parent. You exchanged contact information, and you knew what would happen if they ever needed to go to the doctor. You would be called. So it actually, that part of it is what I end up relying on more than the teachers checking in with them. So I felt, my personal experience, but I felt that was really important for the parents to be very, involved. So it's good. Thank you. Any questions or follow-up? Thank you, Corbett. I don't think we have to approve the ratio. That's right.
You don't have to, but this is.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
If you so choose
I was
to.
forgetting. I was thinking this is a motion. So now I'll ask for a motion to approve the second reading of Administrative Regulation 6153, district-sponsored field trips.
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then the next item is discuss the district's response to school late start Senate bill, and that's bill number 328, as well as the water district fee increases and some of the elements in the resolution. And are we going to put up?
Yeah, I think, Mary, can you bring up the letter? So I think we've discussed this twice previously at the board, and there was some conversation at the last one around, does the board want the opportunity to craft a response, particularly Yes, this is a sample, but I think we talked about maybe directing it specifically at McGuire, because when the superintendents met with McGuire, he said he would not vote for it and then did. So there's a couple of options. Do you want to send it to the chair of the Senate committee, or do you want to send it to, if you want to send anything, where to direct it? But this was just a sample of some language that that could be used. Also, with the addition, if it were to McGuire, is there something more specific and pointed we wanted to say about supporting a bill with information that he had about the impact it would have on schools within his area? And then the water district has come up a couple of times, in trying to give the board an opportunity to discuss the impact of the fee increases and why those are being just placed on our bills and not going through a ballot measure.
So I don't know if how we want to approach this. We could look at the content and then decide how we want to move forward, whether we do it as a more structured, each person take this. Yeah, basically. But do it on our own and bring it to the next meeting. Yeah, I do too, and correcting grammar and spelling. But we could do that on our own and bring it back. We could talk about that. The other thing, I guess, Tara, what you alluded to is we send one to Mike McGuire, definitely, but do we also look ahead knowing that there is a chance if this keeps moving forward, the governor could veto it? Do we focus really to try and influence the outcome and where we go from there? So do you have how would you like to proceed? I guess I want to get a sense in looking at this.
I think it's valuable or important to voice an opinion about these things, maybe to people who don't have a background in education or administration. I think stating an opinion and explaining the on-the-ground impact of that is good, and to the extent that continues to move along, so writing a letter first, certainly to the people who we would hope to influence first, and then following up with advocacy or lobbying to the extent that this continues to move forward, I'd say it's probably the right process. But I think we have a better sense of the impact of this on the education process, and I think it's important to voice that in some formal way. So I appreciate us doing this because I think it's important to do.
Yeah. Dan, I see you nodding. Are you in agreement with that? Okay. Ms. Ronish.
No comment, no.
Ms. Ronish, are you feeling okay?
A little tired. All right.
That's the first.
And it was fake. So yes to O'Donnell if he's chair of the legislation committee. Is that what?
He's this,
Or the Senate, okay. But I think we should write a very pointed letter to Mike McGuire, right? And spell it out, that when we left our meeting with you, you said that based on that information, basically we were surprised with your vote. Because when we had met with you, we were under the impression that once you heard about the impact on the districts, including transportation costs, all of these other things, we felt that we had your assurance that based on that information, you were going to oppose the bill. And, we will be continuing our efforts to, prevent passage of the bill and or, encourage a veto of the bill. And then going forward, I think, yes, particularly with Governor Newsom's connection with Marin, I think we write a letter to Governor Newsom, encouraging him to veto the bill and talking about local control and how the government needs to stay out of the school districts.
Good. It sounds like we have consensus, and so we almost have two versions. Well, we do have two versions. The McGuire version, and then onward version, I'll call it, for Governor Newsom and whoever else is in the chain on the way up, and that's the part I'm not familiar with. So how should we proceed?
Cynthia, I think you're saying we should beef this up to make it a little more personal in terms
Yeah,
of.
for
what-
McGuire, yeah.
And then make a personal one.
Yeah.
McGuire.
Okay,
Right,
yes.
yeah, for
So
McGuire,
I'm
saying we.
totally supportive of that.
Yeah, we met with you, we thought we had a,
Okay, so I think this one, because I think the next stop for the bill is the Assembly Committee. It was referred to the Assembly Committee on Education, so I think submitting this type of, is sort of just registering
Sure.
with them, hey, we don't like this, and then craft a separate letter for McGuire that speaks specifically to when you sit in front of us and say one thing and then vote another way.
And we're watching.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I think a bill similar to this, a bill, we're going to start writing our own bills. How about that? That's my proposal. A letter similar to this to Newsom, on, should this reach your desk?
Aid or warehouse.
Right.
The line.
So a process question, do we want to have just 2 board members work on this with me? Do you want me to bring that back to the July 16th so everyone can see it?
Sure, I have the whole summer.
Oh, that would be great. Thank you, Cynthia. Is there anyone else that would like, it looks like Dan is showing some enthusiasm. He's,
And it could be just one, I don't know.
yeah, so if you're able to do that and then bring it back in July, that'd be
Okay.
terrific. That'd be terrific. Thank you. And then we'll talk about the Water District one. I'm going to my briefcase. I thought I had it with me, but I brought a handout. I'll let you start though.
Okay. Yep, so just to remind everybody, the Water District is proposing increased rates for infrastructure purposes. They are going to be phased in over 3 years. For us, they will, over the 3 years, reach an additional $160,000 a year. Over 3 or 4 years? Over 4 years, yes, it's $40,000 a year. There's been some effort on the part of the county to delay the impact on schools to allow us to change the size of our meters and to do some other things. I think one of the concerns that many school districts have is that that we are all competing for the same dollars, and that for us to get increased funding, it requires us to go out for a parcel tax, which is a 2/3 majority vote, and that the Water District is just placing these onto the bills. And so there's been some process questions around this also.
There's another nuance that I need to look into further, and I'm trying to find my packet with the resolution, but apparently they're, yes, phasing it in, and it'll be on our bills, but have actually said that they plan to put it on the tax bill. So it'll go right on the property tax bill without going to the voters.
Right.
And so that's kind of what you're just saying, but it's, everyone is in need of extra funds, and for them to go around the process is a concern as well. And it's questionable whether that's even allowable, and I think the county probably is looking at that, but that I find concerning, that that's the approach they may be taking.
So I have a couple of questions on this, what you went over, Tara, but as for process, I don't really think that's our position to, that's going to be the courts to decide that, or the county to decide that, and so we might be irritated by it, but if we have legitimate concerns about delay in order to replace our meters, because if we replace the size of our meters, we're charged a lesser amount, is that?
Yeah.
Okay. And if that's cost effective to do that, right? You're not spending more on changing the meters than you would pay in the fees. Then that makes sense that we have a stronger argument to ask for delay there because, but if we start talking about the process, one, I don't know this is going to do anything except register our irritation, but we're not the authority on the process.
Do you think it, and this is a question, it's something I don't have the answer to, but do you think, no matter whatever entity it is, for any entity that can put something on the tax bill of this nature without going to the voters, does that compromise other, whether it's school districts or counties, when they want to put on a bond measure or parcel tax and they have to go to the voters? The voters, we talk about tax fatigue all the time, just putting a disadvantage on school districts and other entities when they want to go out for a tax, but there's just some, I don't know how we.
Well, basically, you're
deal with
saying
it.
it's not fair. You guys got to go around and just put it on the bill without getting voter approval. Why do we have to get voter approval? But the law is we have to get voter approval.
Yeah,
so.
I don't know if that's what I'm saying so much as that.
I don't think
it's up to the community. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, and you're right. I mean, it's probably crossing that line, and it'll just irritate if we approach it that way. But I do have concerns when I see so many, not just school districts, but transportation that need, or fire, that are asking the voters for funding, and so we're all kind of competing for the same finite amount of dollars and trying to respect each other's. You're laughing. I guess I'm not doing this. And you're an attorney, so I do really bad on the stand, I can tell. But I'm just trying to say it just.
It's not we're not the people that are going to be able to say whether this is a tax or not, right? That's up to the county, that's up to the courts if someone wants to file a lawsuit over it. It's very
clear that education taxes have, because there's case law saying those are taxes.
And I think they should be. I think our taxes should be. We want to respond to the community wants.
But I could see, so taking this down the word, I could see word getting out, the TUHSD has opposed Marin County's need to replace the water system, and yet they're going out to ask for X dollars, right? So that's what I'm saying. As far as the process, whether they were right or wrong to put it on the property tax bill and not go through the tax approval process, that's a legal judgment.
Right.
That's not our purview. Are we going after the same taxpayer dollars? Yes, but they're authorized to go after taxpayer dollars. They're trying to figure out how to do it, right? Mm-hmm. So I'd be hesitant about.
Yeah, no, I think those are really good points.
In my opinion, it's an interesting topic because the water district seems to be trying to thread the needle on a legal justification to do something that most taxing authorities can't do for reasons which, you can read it in the newspaper, you can read it in the newsletters that come out. I would have preferred that if they wanted to do infrastructure spending, that they would put it out there so that voters can sign on to that and understand, versus this backdoor approach. But the approach has a fiscal hit to us, right? I mean, in 2 years, it'll sap half of our surplus. So I guess without taking a position on whether or not we support repair and replacement of the infrastructure, I think the process has been poorly, in my opinion, managed in a way where they get to place the impact upon us, and then we would hope that advocacy groups or whatever fight it. I mean, and there are going to be pending lawsuits on that. I mean, this doesn't seem like the type of thing that comes up very often, as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. This is one authority that seems to have constructed a legal rationale to do what should be capital spending, bond-funded capital spending, through this other mechanism.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's our opinion on that, but writing a letter to the water district is not going to change that. Are we going to write a letter to the courts about that? Are we writing a letter to the IJ about that? Are we then opening ourselves up for comments on how many times the TAM district has asked for money, right? So I'm saying we can have that opinion, but I don't know that what we need to focus on, I think, is, okay, assuming that this is put on the property tax bill at X year, can we argue to delay it because of the impact to the school district so that we can change the size of the meter and reduce the funds that we need to put forward for? And I think, I mean, isn't the system over 100 years old? In Marin County?
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to win on this doesn't need to be done. Let's
I
keep kicking the
absolutely
can
agree.
down
Yeah,
the
I don't
street.
think anyone's
So
saying
I don't
that.
think
No.
that's an argument
No.
that we can make. So I think it needs to be done, and how can we do it in the most fiscally responsible way? That's what we have to do to prepare our district for it. I think whether they've done it incorrectly or not, I don't know what us writing the water district will do about that, because
I
it's going to be
think-
settled by the courts.
I think we should write a letter suggesting that they do it the way that most infrastructure spending would be done, which is a bond-funded measure that that finances the work that needs to be done and pays that off over, an extended period of time. Personally, and without passing judgment on them, well, I guess it is passing judgment on them, but yeah, that I believe is probably a manageable fiscal impact upon us, and a process that seems more defensible. But that is,
But in order to prepare that letter, we can't just cite our personal opinion. You'd have to cite case law, you'd have to, right? So you'd actually have to put it out to your council to write the letter to them, citing case law, citing the civil code, citing the ed codes, right? And all of those things. And I don't see what that buys us, because we're not the authority on, and we're not an individual we're not going to file a lawsuit. We're not going to join, I shouldn't say that. In my opinion, I don't think we would join someone's lawsuit against the Marin Municipal Water District. I think we should be preparing for how do we reduce the cost and how do we delay the impact to our budget.
There has been a lot of work done at the county level around this also. I'm not sure where that, I haven't got an update on that. I know that as a county, we were asking for the delay on schools. So I think what I can do is check in on where that process has ended, and I think depending on how the board feels about writing a letter on that, a support in that, is there a joint communication going, something along those lines. Also.
Yes, I think we should, if there's a joint communication, I think we should join that. If there's not, I think we write on behalf of TUHSD to the Marin Municipal Water District saying we advocate a delay because we have to plan for our budgets, plan for change in the meter size, working with the county on that. And for me, that would be the end, right? Because if the other things are being pursued by cost or by other organizations that have talked about filing a legal action, that happens independent. That will have the effect of delaying it, because then a restraining order or restriction might be put in place that it can't be put in place until it's decided by the courts. But I don't think that's our place to do that.
I guess I would sign on with that also. I think our primary objective is to mitigate the impact upon us and let it be played out through a process that hopefully elevates that topic to a point where people are discussing and understanding what's going on, not just those of us who read the opinion page of the Marin IJ. I don't know why. But, I mean, I think that would be good. I think that'd be good to elevate this to a point of, to a point of, putting some added focus on that issue and let it be played out by advocates and regulators and county politicians.
And do we have any sense in terms of what the cost of new meters would be, smaller meters, or how we could mitigate this?
I don't know the savings per, it would depend on, how small we could go with our meters. All of that would have to be researched with the water district.
I'm sure they'll help us to do so.
They did, Mary Jane Birkin, they did explore with legal whether or not public schools could be exempt, and they cannot. That was something that was explored.
Are the other, high school or primary school districts taking a position on that? On this?
Not that I'm aware of. Like I said, we've talked about it collectively, but I haven't heard of anybody else taking an official position.
So do you have any suggestions where we go from here? Do you want to check with the county and see where they are?
And see where, where they are as far as process and looking at delays, and would it help for us to write a letter with the delay? Has the delay been agreed to? Where, I just don't know where they are in that process, so I can reach out and find out and bring it back on.
Yeah, since we'll have we can just have this as a carry-on item as well.
Mm-hmm.
Should we tackle pensions next?
Right.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Now I got to find my agenda.
Oh, board evaluation.
Okay, so now board evaluation. I think, Mary, do you have that we can also put up? I think it was in the packet.
The sample.
Yeah. So I have to admit, I was a bit of a skeptic when we did this, the previous board. We, at that time, thought we would use the most, I'll just say cheapest way of doing it. And it's a self-evaluation. What will happen is that each board member will be given a link, and it takes, I don't recall, I think it took 15 minutes, if that. And you evaluate according to a set of questions and criteria. And then we bring it back to the open board and talk openly about how we were rated. And it's actually helpful, and it's a good time of year to do it with, the end of the school year as we start looking at superintendent evaluation that's every year around this time, and then beyond that, then the board will do our evaluation, then we can set our goals, and we'll not only use the goals for the district with the superintendent, but we can also look at our own self-evaluation and include goals where we know we want to potentially improve some of the way we're functioning. So I actually think this is a good way to go. Just wanted to bring to the board, and if you are in agreement, I can follow up with CSBA, but I was going to ask you, Cynthia, did you use a different way of performing your board self-evaluations at Kentfield that you would recommend?
We had, and I don't know if it was this, I just made a note to myself to find one that we used. Sorry.
To find one that we used in Kentfield, because it was, we didn't use, we may have used a CSBA document, but we just tallied the, our version of Mary, tallied the votes, and then gave the average score for each section. And then we decided that if something fell below a 3, right, then we needed to address it. And I think it was tied a little bit more to, well, it was board goals, because we'd set board goals, which this wasn't as much. So, but I'm willing to, I think it's good to do a board evaluation.
Right.
I think we should always do a board evaluation. And I'm willing to, try this one out this time, and then I'll also try and find the one that we did in
Okay.
Kentfield, and maybe it's the same thing, just in different format.
Okay, very good.
So,
Very good. Kevin or Dan, do you have any, do you want to nod your heads, or?
I think it would be useful to do, and whether reflecting these items or goals,
Great,
or both.
yeah.
I absolutely think we should do it, just there's value in the check-in.
Yeah, no, it's very, very helpful.
I
Well,
think
thank you.
So
Go ahead.
what I think is nice about this too is because we're such a new board,
Yes,
and I think it regrounds in those sort of the norms and agreements in that board workshop that we did. I don't know when we did it, but
we did it in January. I think,
in
yeah.
January. I was going to say last August.
And then we did it,
but I was like,
then we
wait
did
a minute.
follow-up one, yeah.
It didn't start till December.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think I think there's a both and. I think if this board sets goals then next year to reflect on both process and, governance as well as goals is a valuable.
yeah, and one thing that is coming to mind is that we had, and I think there were like 5 segments, and it had a lot of the details in each segment, but then we just gave a ranking for the segment. So we had like 5 rankings. So each
Yeah, I
category
think
had a
that might
ranking,
be it,
and then
yeah.
what we did was, the results were anonymous, but we identified,
Yeah.
when we had our discussion and said, oh, well, I actually ranked us, 2 in this category, and here are the 2 subparts that I focused on, right? So I'm willing to try this, but this might become, it'll be interesting to see how we review it, because you're going to end up with 35 different things that you may be looking at, depending how the colors play out. Right? So then that may lessen the effectiveness of it, but I don't know yet.
Does this come with any guidance as to how to use it? I've never, since,
Yes, and I want to look at the results. We took them off just because it was the former board, but I believe they did average it or something.
Well,
They
and
didn't make
I would
it,
say,
yeah.
because it's done by the colors, so if we can't understand numbers, but it's done by the colors, probably, if you raise that up a little bit, Mary?
Yeah.
I would say anything that probably falls into the orange and red. Red, you absolutely have to address, and orange, it would be advisable that you address that, right? So as we do that review, maybe there are only 3 oranges and 2 reds, who knows, right? But the way we did it in Kentfield, we just had 5 rankings, 1 for each category. Each category had a lot of subparts, and then we said, I think anything was ranked 3 or lower, which would kind of be orange or red, we should address. And then we broke those down. Like, okay, why did we get, if someone graded this as a 2, why, right? And then they'd be like, oh, it was the 3rd element, right, that really made me grade this category a 2. So
Oh,
it's
I
the
see.
same
I see
way.
what you're
It's just
saying. I
this
misunderstood
we're going to end up
before.
with like 35 individual rankings. But it may be that we only have 3 oranges and 2 reds, and then it's fine.
Yeah.
It could be interesting to look at the results and see, like, is there a pattern? Like, is there one area that shows up, and is that, because I do like the idea of, then using that to set goals that are specific to governance, that might be separate from, district-specific goals.
Well, good. I'll take that as an action item to look further into that and bring it back. And we'll look at timing when it makes sense to do it. So the next item, I believe, is the personnel summary.
Good evening, everyone. Just a real quick revision on the personnel summary. Would ask for your approval with one exception. Michelle Moffett is on there as a resignation. She did inform her principal, J.C. Farr, that she is leaving the Tam Union High School District to return to San Francisco Unified, yet she has, frustratingly so, not yet submitted a formal letter of resignation. She's waiting to sign her contract with San Francisco Unified. So we can't just arbitrarily remove her from the
Right.
district. So you'll likely see this name again in July. Both JC and I have been in contact with her to, get this letter in, but we need to pull her name this evening. So I would ask that we approve the personnel summary minus that one name.
And is that holding you up from looking for a replacement?
We're looking now. I mean, resigning on literally the last day of school puts us in a bit of a bind.
A bit, yeah.
So we posted immediately anticipated opening.
Okay.
given we didn't have the letter. So we have been looking without success at this point, but I was on the phone this morning with Karen Hatton, the AP at TAM, and we're beating the bushes. So, no, it's not preventing us from doing the search.
Okay.
We can't formally hire somebody
hire, but at
until
least we're-
she's resigned, but
Yeah.
hopefully that will dovetail at our July meeting. That's the goal.
Any other questions? Okay, can I ask for a motion to approve the personnel summary, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Thank you.
That passed. Thank you, Lars. Okay, we'll move on to trustee reports. So this is a time that we can share any information with each other that we think is important for the other board members to be aware of. I don't have anything in particular I can think of.
I thought you were turning me off. I'm just going to encourage us again that we should all read the books that Dr. Topier recommended, and watch the YouTube on the TED Talk on Danger of a Single Story. Very powerful pieces.
Yeah, I have started reading The Parents We Mean to Be. I never get the title right, but it's pretty. It really. I can't even put words to it. It really says a lot about, helps me understand a lot better what the district is facing, a lot of what you were talking about with respect and responsibility. And so it helps to, I think as a board, I do appreciate you providing us the books you have, because it certainly helps as a board member when we're having to vote on numerous issues to have a better understanding. So I really appreciate it.
We had someone here recently who mentioned two movies. One, The Bad Kids, which I did find. Another one called Circles, or The Circle.
Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah.
What was that
Yeah,
movie?
so I did find Circles, and that is a film based out of Oakland, and it focuses on work in the alternative schools in Oakland around restorative practices, and using, it kind of addresses this idea of can we talk about responsibility and relationship, and when you do something wrong, you're harming the community, and then you make reparations to that community rather than punishing and suspending. It's really about how do we address behaviors while keeping kids in school and allowing them to continue to learn and grow as people.
Okay. I mean, the reason I asked is because I was looking around. I couldn't figure out the specific name of who produced it or whatever. I couldn't find it on like Xfinity or Apple
Right.
TV. So if you have that information, could you
Sure, I'll
just let
link
me
that.
know? I mean, I'd be interested in seeing it.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay. We'll move on. Are there any public comments on items not on the agenda? Okay, now it's time, Dan, you're on to talk about the norms and how well you think we did. Or not so well, whatever you want to say.
I think we did well. We respected he or she who was first with the buzzer.
Yeah, the speed, we're going to do the speedy one.
And then did not interrupt. So I'll leave it at that.
You did all your.
No, thank you. I think we had a very nice meeting. It's really a pleasure to approve that budget. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, meeting adjourned.